In the ancient world, there was no greater protection than the blessing of Poseidon. Helike had it. Then Poseidon collected. Helike, a prosperous city on the southern shore of the Corinthian Gulf, in the region of Achaea in the northern Peloponnese. By 373 BC, it had been there for centuries. It had a harbor, an agora, temples, streets, a civilization. Helike was the leading city of the Achaean League, the political federation governing a dozen Greek city-states along the northern coast. When the League voted, Helike's voice came first. At the center of the city stood the sanctuary of Poseidon, not a minor shrine, the most important one. Cities from across the Mediterranean sent representatives here. Games were held. Alliances were sealed under the god's roof. Poseidon was Helike's patron, its identity, its pride. The harbor never quieted. Olive oil, wine, bronze, grain. The Corinthian Gulf was one of the busiest waterways in the Greek world, and Helike sat at its eastern approaches. It was in all ways a place where people expected to grow old. Then Helike made an error. A group of Spartan exiles had taken refuge inside the sanctuary of Poseidon. Sanctuary was sacred. You could not be touched there. The Helicians dragged them out and killed them. The ancient world took such things seriously. Other Greek cities sent demands for compensation. Helike refused. A few days before the end, the animals left. Mice, snakes, weasels, centipedes. Every creature that lives underground moved toward the hills. The ancient historians recorded this. At the time, no one in Helike understood what it meant. The winter of 373 BC, an ordinary evening in December, cold on the Corinthian Gulf in winter. The fires are lit. The day is ending. The earthquake begins before midnight. Not a tremor, an event. The kind of shaking that knocks walls down and splits foundations open. Beneath Helike, the ground is doing something unusual. The city sits on an ancient river delta, layers of silt and alluvium deposited over thousands of years. Saturated ground. When the earthquake hits, the soil begins to liquefy. It stops behaving like solid earth. The city begins to sink before the wave arrives. Buildings tilt. Streets crack open. The harbor edge drops below the waterline. This is not a city being damaged. This is a city being swallowed. Out in the Corinthian Gulf, the water pulls back. Sailors on ships anchored offshore see the seabed exposed. Rocks and sand that have never seen air. Anyone who recognizes this sign has perhaps 60 seconds. The wave arrives. The Greek word for it is cataclysmos. It crosses the subsided plain and fills everything the earthquake has not already taken. 10 Macedonian warships are anchored in Helike's harbor. All 10 are swept inland and wrecked. The crews survive. The city does not. By dawn, Helike is gone. The agora, the sanctuary of Poseidon, the harbor, the houses, all underwater. Ancient sources record the depth above the sunken city, 5 fathoms, 30 feet. There are no survivors from the city itself. Not one. A city of several thousand people disappears between darkness and dawn. Rescue parties arrive from the surrounding region in the days that follow. They stand at the water's edge and look down. They can see, through the surface, the tops of buildings, the roof of a temple, the upper section of the bronze statue of Poseidon, the very god who was supposed to protect this place, standing in the submerged sanctuary with its arms raised. Divers go down to recover bodies. The buildings are too intact, too dense. The city is perfectly preserved under 30 feet of water and perfectly unreachable. Within a generation, Helike is visited as a curiosity, then as a monument. The statue of Poseidon becomes a navigation hazard. Fishermen have to steer around it. For 500 years after the disaster, the ruins of Helike are visible from the surface. The water is clear. Sailors and travelers see the grid of streets below them, the fallen columns, the foundations of temples. The city is gone but not hidden. Pausanias, writing in the 2nd century AD, 5 centuries after the earthquake, visits the site. The walls are still visible. The bronze statue of Poseidon is still standing in the submerged sanctuary. Strabo describes the city clearly. He notes that later seismic activity has shifted the coastline, but Helike is still there. The ancient world does not forget it. It becomes a reference point, the thing you say when you want to describe total destruction. In Athens, 4 years after Helike sinks, a philosopher is writing a dialogue about a civilization swallowed by the sea in a single day and night. Plato calls the lost city Atlantis. Scholars have argued ever since how much Helike was in his mind when he wrote it. Then the centuries pile up. The Corinthian Gulf silts over. The coastline shifts. The water above Helike becomes less clear. By the medieval period, no one can see the city anymore. The location becomes approximate, then uncertain, then lost. The 19th century, a massive earthquake in 1861 reshapes the local coastline again. Scholars start searching for Helike in earnest. The assumption is universal. It sank into the sea, so it must be on the seafloor of the Corinthian Gulf. Underwater surveys begin. Sonar sweeps, diving expeditions. Teams search the floor of the Gulf systematically through the 20th century. They find nothing. No foundations, no columns, no statue. The problem is the assumption. Everyone is looking in the water, but the coastline of 373 BC is not the coastline of today. 2,000 years of river sediment, tectonic movement, and earthquake activity have pushed the shore outward by hundreds of meters. Helike did not go deeper. It went further inland. In the 1980s and 1990s, two researchers approached the problem differently. Greek archaeologist Dora Katsonopoula and American scientist Stephen Soter study the geology, sediment cores, ancient river delta patterns, the physics of how coastlines change over millennia. They look at where the shore was, not where it is. The results point to a plain, behind the modern coastal highway, under a farmer's fields, not under the sea at all. In 2001, test trenches go down into the plain. 8 meters of accumulated silt. At the bottom, ancient building material, pottery, coins, bronze objects, mosaic floors, classical-era artifacts from precisely the period of Helike's destruction. The city was not under the sea. It was under the land. The earthquake sank it in 373 BC. The sea flooded it, and then 2,000 years of silt from the Selinus and Caronites rivers buried it completely, 8 meters down, half a kilometer from the modern shoreline. The silt preserved it. No oxygen, no light, no disturbance. Everything sealed at the moment of destruction. Pottery mid-use. Tools set down and never picked up. The ordinary objects of an ordinary evening that had no reason to become extraordinary. Beneath the classical city, the excavations find something else. Bronze Age remains. An even older Helike, 2,000 years earlier than the one that sank. The site has been continuously occupied for at least 4,000 years. The sanctuary of Poseidon has not yet been found. The site is less than 10% excavated. What is already uncovered suggests that Helike, when fully exposed, will be one of the most complete ancient Greek cities ever discovered, preserved not by intention, but by catastrophe. The statue of Poseidon is still down there. Somewhere in the silt, under the fields of the northern Peloponnese, the bronze arms are still raised. In 373 BC, a city of several thousand people went to sleep under the protection of the god of the sea. They did not wake up. The sea came. The earth followed. For 2,000 years, the ruins waited in the dark, 8 meters down, under a farmer's field, half a kilometer from the water that destroyed them. Plato invented Atlantis the same year. Or perhaps he didn't invent it at all. Perhaps he just changed the name.